you are there, then you will refuse to compromise on that issue, and you will find another way to fund the essential services of government. There are a few things that the state government ought to be doing, and they do need to be funded, but they do not need to be funded at the risk of our freedom, and we must eliminate property tax. In Texas, if you follow my campaign at all, you know that I'm going to say to you that there are 3 ways that government raises money: income tax, property tax, and sales tax. And income tax and property tax are the most onerous, the most regressive, the most likely to be abused, and they ought not be used. The best way to fund essential government services is through a broad-based sales tax, and that's what we ought to be doing here in Texas. So pushing hard on that, first, to preserve freedom, to give us back private property ownership. Second, we got to talk about state sovereignty. The governor seems to have just discovered the 10th Amendment. Again, some of us recognize that the powers given to the federal government are pretty limited, and all not given to the federal government are reserved to the people and the states. There is no authority for the federal government to be involved in agriculture. There is no authority for the federal government to be involved in health care. There is no authority for the federal government to be in energy. There is no authority for the federal government to be in education. We got a long road ahead of us to get those things back in proper perspective. I recognize, I'm in healthcare, I know a huge part, probably in excess of 60% of your revenue if you're in healthcare, comes from the federal government. I understand that. But if we want to stand that 3-legged stool back on 3 legs, we at least got to know where we're going. We got to be willing to fight. And Jefferson said, it is the unquestionable right of the states to determine when the federal government reaches outside of the Constitution. The unquestionable right, it's our job as Texas to say to Washington, D.C., no, you cannot do that. You do not have the constitutional authority to do that. And he said the rightful remedy is nullification and interposition. It is not... It is not the bloody war of secession, and don't misunderstand me. I understand that that's an option, but it's certainly not the first line of defense. And when I spoke in Austin several months ago at the Sovereignty versus Secession rally, my comments were directed primarily at the governor. How dare you, sir, toss around the word secession like you threw out yesterday's newspaper? When you start talking about secession, you better realize that it is going to be bloody. We will not dissolve this union. We ought not be talking about dissolving this union. This is the greatest country. And we will keep it that way when we uphold our end of the bargain. See, we've got a duty here. It's not all on Washington. It's on us. The unquestionable right of the states to judge when the federal government oversteps. Have we in Texas nullified anything? No. Ever in recent memory? We're not even, we're talking about it now on the way over here today. Terry was telling me she was in an event just this week with our state rep, and he's talking about nullification. No kidding, I was shocked. They're picking it up. They're listening to this campaign. They're paying attention. I had a great conversation Monday night with Kevin Brady. He said, I'm real intrigued. Really?
Yeah, right.
How long you been in Washington? You know, can you guys not study the Constitution and start to realize, how about you read the writings of the founders so you understand a little bit about what they were thinking when they crafted that document that is the basis of the greatest country that ever existed? How about you understand a little bit about that foundation so you know what's caused this building to stand as solid as it has for as long as it has? How about you understand how that foundation was laid so that we protect it and we secure it and we promote it? Nullification. The question is not, do we nullify? I think it's where. I remember one of those games, I think it was called Pickup Sticks. You know, you throw all those little plastic sticks out and you try to pull one out without making the whole thing fall. Well, I want to pull one out. Which leg do we pull out from under the federal government? Is it the leg that props up your intervention into ag and then all the others fall? Or is it the leg that props up your intervention into health care and then all the others fall? We need legal minds at the table. We forget about, in the First Amendment, we've got freedom of speech and religion and the press. We forget about assembly. I had a man tell me 2 years ago, Deborah, you know what that's there for? And I thought, well, I'm not sure I do. He said, because the founders understood that it was in the assembly, the deliberative assembly of men, that we find wisdom. We all know what the problems are. None of us have the answer. But when we come together in an assembly, let's put the bright legal minds that exist in Texas together and say to them, find a way, knock down, where can we attack this federal overreach in our lives so that it crumbles, not just in ag, but in education and healthcare and energy. Get Washington back in Washington where it belongs. Not just lip service, but strong, aggressive use of the tools that are available to us so that our children don't bleed to preserve this union because we were negligent in our use of the tools that the founders told us we ought to be using. It is the unquestionable right, and I would say, and duty of the state of Texas to keep Washington in check and to make sure that that federal government is a limited constitutional federal government and not an overreaching tyrannical one. So secure private property ownership again in Texas to prop up our freedom. Reinstate state sovereignty by using the tools of nullification and interposition. And then we've got to fortify, control, and secure our border. That is Washington's job, isn't it? That is one of the rightful duties of the federal government, to protect and secure the borders of the country. But none of us can hold our breath any longer and wait for that to happen. Texas, where Washington, we need to push Washington aggressively. We need to push aggressively for them to do their job. But we must, in the meantime, step up as a state to secure that border. I have gotten punched harder on that than I have on anything in this campaign because people are so hungry for a solution. And I want a solution, I do. But I am not going to stand up here and make empty promises that I have no idea how to fulfill. I'm a lot farther along in that discussion today than I was a couple of months ago. I have visited with and now been down to talk to border sheriffs. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago, a meeting in Hudspeth County. You've heard me talk about Hudspeth County some. Louise Whiteford from right here in Houston referred me to Arvin West. Arvin is the sheriff in Hudspeth County. He is the chairman of the Texas Border Sheriffs Coalition. Went out to meet with him when we were on that West Texas tour and talked to him about what it would take to secure the border. Every sheriff I've talked to date is interested in promoting and preserving a legal immigration process in this country. And I talk often about the wealth of a nation